Good afternoon from the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. I'm NASA's Josh Byerly. It has been more than 5.5 years worth of work between NASA and Orbital Sciences and several weeks worth of work here at the flight facility getting ready for tomorrow's launch. And now it is time for Cygnus to fly. Tomorrow's launch is scheduled for 10:50 a.m. Eastern Time. Of course, we'll have live coverage here on NASA television beginning at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time, 9:15 a.m. Central Time. Here to give us more details about what's ahead is Alan Lindemoyer, NASA's Commercial Crew and Cargo Program Manager. We are also joined by Frank Culbertson, Executive Vice President from Orbital Sciences. We are also joined by Mike Pinkston, Antares Program Manager from Orbital Sciences. And we also have Sarah Doherty, who will be the test director for tomorrow. She and her team will be in charge of actually launching the rocket. We're going to take some questions from here at Wallops at the end of each of the statements from the panelists. We'll go around to the other NASA centers. And we're also taking questions on social media. If you would like to use the hashtag AskNASA, we'll see if we can get them in as well. Let's get started with Alan.
Thank you, Josh. Well, certainly very excited and happy to be here today on the preparation for the COTS demonstration of the orbital vehicle, the new Antares and the new Cygnus cargo carrying spacecraft to the International Space Station. This is a result of partnerships that have been cultivated on so many different levels over the last several years. Certainly a very close cooperation between NASA and Orbital, our commercial partner, and Orbital developed very close, of course, working relationships with their international partners and their domestic partners. And then it involved, because this being a commercial mission, close cooperation with the FAA, here at the NASA Wallops Flight Facility, the range at Wallops, the state of Virginia, and the brand new commercial spaceport here at Mars at Pad 0A, and a very close cooperation with the International Space Station, who has helped with all of the technical integration of these new vehicles, allowing it to approach and do a demonstration mission to the space station. So the partnership's very important, very critical to the success of this program. Let's see, if we can pull up the first chart. I'll just recap our Space Act agreement with Orbital. Orbital was awarded the Space Act in 2008, February 2008, after a very intense competition. We had a very healthy group of potential participants in COTS on the second round competition, and Orbital came out on top as the company that had our highest level of confidence that they would be able to complete their development and demonstration, and we are certainly glad to be here today at the culmination of that demonstration effort. In our agreement with Orbital, we agreed to a series of milestones, 29 milestones over the course of the agreement, and this is the last one. This is the last milestone that we have in the agreement with Orbital. On the next chart, I can show you these milestones. Each one of the dots represents one of those 29 checkpoints. You could back up one. I would speak to this series of milestones here. Now, these milestones are checkpoints for us, and any one of them could have been an off-ramp for us. If we were observing that there was not sufficient progress being made, or Orbital was not able to complete one of the milestones, and we didn't have any confidence that they would be able to continue, well then that could have been an off-ramp. But in all the cases, these turned out being rewards for Orbital instead, and that's how we made our incremental payments to Orbital, up to $288 million worth of NASA contribution. It was a period of development over about 5.5 years, starting with design and development, going through a test and production program, and culminating here with 2 flight demonstrations. The first successful flight of Antares last April, and now tomorrow's flight of the demonstration to the space station. Okay, next chart, please. So with our agreement with Orbital, we agreed to an end-to-end demonstration of their system. Orbital is responsible for the entire mission, from receiving our cargo from NASA, launching, delivering on orbit, and then safely disposing and re-entering of the vehicle. So as part of the agreement, we've detailed a number of key mission objectives, the pre-launch, including things for receiving cargo, packing and loading into the Cygnus vehicle and the pressurized cargo module, demonstrating the ability to take our late load, that is cargo that we would like to load in the vehicle just days before mission, and then completing the countdown polling and getting ready for launch. Of course, in the launch sequence, we will see the separation of the first stage, the operation of the second stage, inserting Cygnus into the proper orbit, checking out the vehicle, and making sure there's good communications throughout the flight. On orbit, there will be a series of demonstration maneuvers on the way to the space station. There are gates of 10 separate demonstrations that will occur, the first of which will occur the day after launch, demonstrating abort procedures, hold procedures, and GPS, Global Positioning System navigation. And then over the coming days, there will be a series of other demonstrations leading up to the approach, rendezvous, and capture and berthing with the space station. Once berthed, the Cygnus, for the first time, will be mated with the space station at the common berthing mechanism. That'll be checked out. And the day after capture and berthing, they will be ingress into the vehicle, and then they will begin the operations of transferring the cargo and stowing the cargo that's accumulated on the station for disposal when it comes back after about 30 days on orbit. So about 30 days after approach and berthing, there will be the departure maneuvers, and then 2 days later, there will be a reentry over the South Pacific. So why don't we pull up the video here, and I can talk through what we would expect to see over the coming days. Tomorrow morning, it's going to be a beautiful day here at Wallops, ready for launch at 10:50 in the morning, and we'll see that first stage burn for about 4 minutes. About a minute and 20 seconds after this first stage cuts off, you'll see the fairing separation, and then the second stage will ignite, burning for about 2.5 minutes, sending Cygnus into its insertion orbit. Cygnus will separate from the second stage after about 10 minutes. And then a minute and a half later, we'll see Cygnus come to life, and it will, the solar arrays will begin to deploy about 11 minutes, 33 seconds into the mission. And it takes about 30 minutes for that to completely deploy and get checked out. Then Cygnus will begin its 4-day journey to the space station, doing several maneuvers and phasing burns to catch up with the space station. If all goes well, there'll be go, no goes, and if everything looks good, we'll give the go to approach the station. And then on September 22nd right now, at about 7:25 a.m. Eastern Time, we will see our crew members capture the Cygnus and then begin the berthing process. And that berthing process takes about an hour and a half by the time our crew captures the vehicle and then actually gets berthed to the node on the bottom of the space station there. So once berthed, it'll be checked out the next day. They'll open the hatch, and then it'll begin 30 days of activity on orbit. There's about 1,300 pounds of supplies on the vehicle, different things from food, clothing, office supplies. It is not fully packed for this demonstration mission, but it certainly is got some important and critical supplies for the station. So October 22nd is the current planned date for unberthing the Cygnus from the space station. It'll do a series of departure maneuvers. And then about 2 days later, after the Cygnus departs the station, we'll see a re-entry burn and then a safe re-entry over the South Pacific. And that will be the end of the COTS demonstration mission. This is certainly a demonstration not only of the technical capabilities of the system, but also of how well we work together with this new way of doing business with public-private partnerships. It's been very successful with the bringing on board the cargo services from the SpaceX, who've successfully flown now 2 resupplies to the missions to the space station. We've extended this model into our commercial crew partnerships, and we expect that there will be many other opportunities as we continue exploring deeper into space. I want to thank my team, Bruce Manners and my team, for working day to day from the very beginning to help make this happen. Of course, Orbital being a fantastic partner, overcoming all the challenges to get here. The International Space Station, who worked so very hard with all of their experts, making sure that everything was ready to go, having this system meeting the interfaces to the space station requirements. This is so critical to NASA to continue to resupply the station so it can do its amazing discoveries on orbit. And by turning over these capabilities to low Earth orbit, this is allowing NASA to focus on the more challenging efforts of continuing human exploration deeper into space. So thank you very much, and I'll be glad to take your questions at the end of the briefing. Frank.
Thank you very much, Alan. And it's very exciting for us to be here today. I bring greetings from our CEO, David Thompson, who will be here this afternoon, along with other senior management from Orbital. And this is one of the most exciting things that's happening in the middle of a very exciting month for Orbital, for NASA, and for space programs around the world. There's a lot of launches, re-entries, events going on that people should pay a lot of attention to. And we're happy to be the focus of attention for today and tomorrow. Launching Antares tomorrow is going to be a major step in our program. And in fact, the final step for the COTS program. And Alan, thank you very much for all you've done to keep this program going and to work closely with us. You and your team have been phenomenal. And on behalf of David and the rest of the team, I want to echo some of what Alan said and extend our thanks to other folks in NASA. The folks here at Wallops have worked very hard to help get us ready, to work with us, to build a HIF, to work with us in the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, who we also appreciate their contributions to make this a reality, this commercial launch operation at Wallops Island. The International Space Station program and the other teams at JSC and at KSC and at Marshall have contributed, and we certainly appreciate all of that effort too. It's truly been a team that has been focused on making this a reality, this cargo resupply service, and we're going to take a next big step tomorrow in turning that into a service for Orbital. We're going to carry 700 kilograms to the space station on Cygnus, and Cygnus is a spacecraft that I'll describe in a little more detail in just a moment, but that's also going to be a very exciting day for us in about 4 or 5 days. Why don't we go ahead and roll the video that we have. This is video from the test flight in April, and I'm sure Mike is going to speak a little bit more about Antares and that. But you can see that the sequence of events went very smoothly. Here's the separation of the first and second stage, and now the fairing that surrounds the payload separates. Then the second stage separates from its fairing and ignites and takes us into orbit. The Cygnus itself, the service module, was built at Dulles at our satellite manufacturing facility. It's one of our larger spacecraft and based in many ways on the legacy of our GEO and LEO spacecraft. It's integrated with the pressurized cargo module, which was sent ahead of time by our partners from Thales Alenia, and we really appreciate the hard work that they've put into this. They are running well ahead of schedule, and have produced a fantastic piece of hardware based on many of the modules that they've built in the past successfully for the space program. And you can see here we are integrating the PCM and the service module prior to transporting it to the island so it could be fueled a couple of months ago, and then it has been integrated to the rocket itself, and Mike has some pictures to show you about that. The cargo was loaded while it was in the H-100, which is on the main base across the road, and then the fuel was added on the island prior to going into the HIF, the Horizontal Integration Facility, where it was mated with the rocket itself. So from a technical standpoint, we are ready to go. We've conducted numerous joint mission simulations with the mission control team in Houston. We've been through a lot of contingency scenarios and worked through many problems to reach this point. We're very proud of our team, the folks who do our INT, the people who've done our engineering development, our safety and mission assurance that have made sure we stayed on track, have done a great job of getting us to this point. And the launch team, who did a great rehearsal a couple of days ago, we have a tremendous confidence in, and we're looking forward to them making a good delivery on orbit. I'll talk more after the launch about the significance of this accomplishment and where we're going and where we're going next. But I just want to mention that after we do that re-entry in about a month, Alan, we'll have about 6 weeks to turn around for the next launch in December, Mike. And we'll be looking for a ride right before Christmas, so watch out for the holiday traffic. But we're going to keep going, and we're going to fulfill our obligations on the contract once we finish this demonstration. Again, a very exciting week for Orbital. Tomorrow's going to be a very exciting day. It's kind of like, how long can you hold your breath? But the team is ready. The weather's looking good, and all the people that have contributed to this have really paid attention to detail, and I'm sure that things are going to go well. So I look forward to your questions, and I'm sure we'll be talking later. Thanks. And now I'd like to introduce Mike Pinckney, who is the program manager for the Antares.
Pinkston, Frank.
Pinkston. Sorry.
On behalf of the Antares team, I'd also like to add, how excited we are to be here for this big event tomorrow. Certainly, the test flight back in April was a huge and important milestone, but we all know the big event is the one coming up tomorrow, and in terms of Orbital really demonstrating our capability to put cargo on the station. And the Antares team is excited to be a part of it, and we're ready to go. So with that, if you could bring up my first graphic, we'll show you some photos of kind of the process recently of getting to this point. The first one is a picture of the HIF 2-3 weeks ago. Those of you that were on the tour today, you'll note that it was quite a bit more packed a couple of weeks ago. Up on the top left of the picture, you'll see the Orb D1 rocket. It's fully integrated. It's got the main engine system on the back, and you can see the mounted to the front of it. The second stage up in front of it is actually the upper stack assembly for the Orb 1 mission coming up in December. In the center is right in front of you is the fairing for Orb D1, and then behind it is the core for the Orb 1 mission, and then over on the far right you'll see the TEL waiting for the rocket, and then up in the foreground you can see Cygnus under wraps sitting on a skid waiting for integration. There's quite a game of moving stuff around once we actually got to the point a couple of weeks ago of moving the Koch rocket over to the TEL. And then, as you saw in the HIF today, the Orb 1 core has now been moved over to the east rail and is in the final throes of getting ready for the mission in December. So if you could bring up the next one. This is a photo of the Cygnus after integration. We break the Cygnus over, put it on a handling cart, and then roll it up to the front end of the second stage and mate it together. It goes through a series of system checkouts to make sure all the interfaces are working properly. And then you can see a fixture up on the front that allows the Cygnus team access to the hatch where they can do the late cargo load. And then they'll button the hatch back up, pressurize it, and then we're ready for fairing installation at that point. And if you go to the next one, you can see us actually at the final end of encapsulating the payload with the payload fairing. Obviously, those big handling fixtures come off, and we bolt it on, get the dollies out from under it, and then it's pretty much ready to roll out to the pad. And on to the next graphic there, you can see it coming out the door. So we rolled out after midnight, early Friday morning, delayed a little bit by the weather. You can see some of the rain still on the ground underneath it. It's about an hour journey from the HIF up to the launch mount, and after a few struggles to get the thing all aligned properly, we finally got it up and vertical in the afternoon on Friday. And I think if you cut to the next picture, you'll see Antares vertical on the pad with Cygnus safely under the fairing, and you can't tell from that photo, but there's a flurry of activity down there getting all the final preparations done. We finished up all of our testing, last of the testing last night, and today has been pretty much dedicated to closing up the rocket, some final walkdowns by our engineering team, and then this afternoon, shortly after this briefing, they'll be doing the final arming and getting ready for our team to be back on console about 2:30 in the morning for a launch tomorrow about 10:50. So with that, I'll look forward to questions. But Sarah Doherty.
Can I have it go back?
Yeah, you can have it go back.
Sorry, can I have it go back?
You can't.
All right, I apologize. I wanted to announce one other thing, and that's something we announced earlier, but just so everybody is aware of it and informed. Orbital has a tradition of naming our spacecraft, and this one has a very special name. It's named after an individual who was an explorer in space, a shuttle astronaut, and an orbital employee for a long time with great ties to this program. Unfortunately, he passed away about 5 years ago. However, he was really part of the inspiration for Orbital being selected for both the COTS and the CRS programs, and that's Mr. G. David Lowe. G. David was a friend of mine and a classmate of mine at NASA, but also an amazing engineer, a great father and husband, and a terrific friend to many of us. But he had a vision of exploring space and wanted to explore further himself. But I think he'd be proud of what we've done so far, and I think he is very much a part of it based on what he has done over the years. And so we have named this first spacecraft to rendezvous and berth with the space station for Orbital, the spaceship G. David Lowe. And his family will be here to watch the launch, and we're very proud of that, but also very humbled by the fact that someone so special will be remembered in this way. And now Sarah Doherty.
All right, thank you, Frank. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Doherty. I'm the test director here on the NASA Wallops Launch Range for the mission tomorrow. So as that, my responsibilities are for ensuring the vehicle has a clear path to space, and also to ensure that we can track it on its way there. So earlier today, our facility director, Bill Robel, granted authority to proceed, which is our final gate to a go for launch. So that has been granted, and that was our final milestone today. So now we're just ready to carry out the countdown and the mission plan that we have spent weeks and months creating. If you go to my first graphic, this is just a picture of our range instrumentation that we have ready to track the vehicle tomorrow. We have radars and telemetry antennas that will track the vehicle from here at Wallops, as well as other sites in Coquina, North Carolina, and in Bermuda. So all those sites have been configured and tested and verified, ready to go for tomorrow's launch operation. Another part of safe flight is ensuring the launch area is clear prior to launch, and so we have gotten approval from external agencies such as the FAA and the Fleet Forces Area Control VACAPES to ensure the airspace and the ocean surface space is clear tomorrow for our flight. If you go to my next graphic, you'll see there it's a fairly good sized area, but this is our ship avoidance area, and we have published notice to mariners to notify everyone that this area is the hazard area for our launch, and we'll be working in coordination with the Coast Guard and the Virginia Marine Police tomorrow to ensure this area is clear. As always, we appreciate the support from our local mariners here to cooperate and coordinate with us, and that's been a really great partnership for all of our missions. The next graphic that I have is something everyone is probably waiting for, and that's the launch weather forecast. This was the L-minus 48-hour forecast, so it was the forecast yesterday for tomorrow, and it is still valid. It is barely changed from yesterday to today. So the forecast is for partly cloudy skies, winds out of the east with 9 to 14 knots. Temperature will be in the very low 70s, maybe high 60s. Very good distance and visibility with 7 miles there, and about a 25% chance of low clouds. So from a launch weather perspective, that's a very favorable forecast, with the only issue that we may run into is some low-level cloudiness, but all things still looking good. And finally, I'll move to my last graphic. This is a visibility map where we can see the rocket launch across the ocean space there, and the flight should be visible from about New York City down the East Coast to almost the border of North Carolina or South Carolina at certain times of flight. So if you're anywhere along the central East Coast there, you should be able to get a glimpse of launch tomorrow. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our host.
Okay, let's take some questions from here first, then we'll go to the phone lines. And again, we're taking questions on social media. You just use the hashtag AskNASA, and we'll get you into the briefing. Let's start down here in the front with Ken.
Hi, Ken Kramer for Universe Today. Two quick questions for anybody. Can you tell us what were the late stow items, and are there any goodies for the astronauts on board?
The late stow was whatever NASA gave us, and we think it's we think it's food and some tools that were specified later, maybe some spare parts. It was about 140 kilograms worth of hardware. But we don't actually open the bags and look at them, and it's usually just a general list of what we're carrying. And yes, there are some goodies for the astronauts on board.
Okay. Let's go over here to Irene, then we'll come to Tarek.
Hi, Irene Klotz with Reuters. I have several questions. I think the first is for Frank. Could you just go through the how long Cygnus could stay on orbit on battery without having the solar arrays out? First of all, and I guess in a general sense, then some other kind of edge of the seat moments for you guys in the flight control centers.
Well, we can survive for approximately 24 hours without the solar arrays fully deployed. If one were to deploy and not the other, then we'd have a little bit longer, and we'd have to evaluate our situation. But we think we have a very reliable system. Dutch Space builds the arrays, and they have a really good track record with deploying them. And so we think that'll happen on time. And then we'll be able to continue with the normal rendezvous. We have to worry about this also during the grapple operation, or the rendezvous and grapple operation, because we're not always facing the sun with the solar arrays during that time frame. And so once we grapple, we do take power from the station, but if they're not able to transfer power, we then still have the 24-hour limit of fully charged batteries being able to power the spacecraft. What was the other question?
Just on a more general sense, other key moments in the everything that would be new from what you tested and saw from the Antares demo flight to what you need to do to achieve this mission.
Yeah, the test flight demonstrated all the key events of getting us into orbit, and so we'll be watching that again, and you always watch those very carefully, but we have a lot of confidence that they'll repeat. Once we get in orbit, the first thing, of course, is to deploy the solar arrays and power up the spacecraft. So we'll be looking for signals that the spacecraft does in fact have power, and it has activated its guidance and control. Solar arrays are deployed, and then if we for some reason had a malfunction during launch and were not inserted in the proper orbit, then we'd also be looking for an early burn, but we don't anticipate that being likely at all. And so we'll be looking then for the next burn to put us into a circular orbit and start on our chase for the station.
And for Alan, what does NASA consider mission success for this? And I understand, I know 2.5 million in the scheme of things is not a lot, but is that money contingent on a certain outcome of this mission?
Right. We carefully planned our payment schedule to Orbital so that most of the funding was available up front when they needed to complete the more costly work of doing the development, demonstration, and test. So this is just a last payment we reserved for the completely successful demonstration of the mission. So I showed you the mission objectives. Those are what we laid out in our Space Act agreement, and those are the criteria for success.
Thanks. And I have also just a kind of a continuing from this to the commercial resupply contract. The GAO had a report earlier this summer about the payments that NASA's made to Orbital. I guess about a third of the money of the 1.9 has already been paid. So this might be a combination question for the two of you. Was that money needed to get to this point on the COTS program is one part, and then the other part is if there's a problem with this flight, would NASA be okay with going ahead with commercial resupply, or how does that work? And I know you probably went through this with us with SpaceX, but I don't remember what the criteria was, if there was some other work that would need to be done, if the company is responsible for that, or how that would work. Thanks.
Let me take the last question
You do that one, and I'll do the other.
first. The SpaceX flight was a little different because it was the second of 3 planned flights, and we granted approval for SpaceX to attempt to complete the full demonstration to the space station on the second flight. If there was a problem, SpaceX was planning to repeat the demonstration on a third COTS demonstration. That's not the situation here. We only have 2 flights planned with Orbital, the maiden flight of Antares, and then this would be the one and only demonstration we have planned under the COTS agreement. So this will be the culmination of the COTS program one way or another. Now, most likely, whatever problems are encountered, I am confident that Orbital will be able to overcome the problem, and that we will continue on into the resupply service missions to the station under that contract.
And we're operating under sort of the same premise, depending on what the problem was. They need the cargo, so I'm assuming they'll press forward with that. In terms of the report that you're speaking of earlier, first of all, COTS and CRS are 2 totally separate contracts, 2 totally separate financing arrangements, and they're accounted for totally separately in the company. One's a Space Act agreement with our own company investment involved, and the other one is a fixed price FAR-based contract with NASA, with the International Space Station program. In the first case, in COTS, the orbital investment far exceeds the NASA investment, and so, you know, that's not something we reveal in detail, but the fact remains that NASA is a major investment, and they set it up to be fairly front-loaded from their perspective, but it's even more front-loaded and heavier on Orbital itself, and so we're hoping for a long series of CRS missions to hopefully recoup some of that. As far as CRS goes, the report pointed out, I don't remember the exact percentage of how much has been paid to Orbital up to this point, and you said about a third. Well, I have to point out we have actually accomplished close to 75% of the work required to execute those 8 missions. So we're not being paid ahead. In fact, there's a significant holdback that depends on us successfully launching, docking, and unloading or berthing, and then unloading the cargo before we receive a significant portion of the payment on any given mission. So it's a lot of money, and there's no doubt about that, but we're providing a lot of work, and we're going to carry a lot of cargo. And when you add the numbers up, you'll see how much it is compared to other people's predictions.
Okay, let's go to Robert, and then we'll take a few more in here, and then we'll go to the phone lines and come back.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com. I think for Frank, Can you preview what we'll see tomorrow in terms of cameras and throughout the flight, in terms of separation of Cygnus, and then as Cygnus flies approaching the station, are there cameras to give views from there?
The cameras you'll see on launch will be very similar to what we saw on the test flight. Hopefully they'll look almost identical,
Hope so.
and including the sequence of events. And then when we're on orbit, there is a camera on the spacecraft, but I'm not sure how much it'll show, Carl, when we're approaching.
Real time, it's all down like that.
Right. The real time, there won't really be anything except what comes down from the station looking at us. But the Cygnus camera will be downloaded or downlinked later because we have bandwidth restrictions on being able to send it all down live. So you'll see some things later.
Okay, Tarek.
Thank you. Tarek Malik with Space.com. I think my question is for Alan. Yeah, we saw a successful Antares flight in April. You had a SpaceX launch in a month prior to that. You've got another orbital flight at the end of the year, and then SpaceX again. And I'm just wondering how vital it is to have a redundancy now of cargo access to the station with orbital flights now, to really kind of give NASA the flexibility it needs to have more than one to rely on.
Well, that's always an important factor. We don't, you never want to be put in a situation where if there's a problem with one of the suppliers that you don't have the ability to continue your resupply chain to the space station. So we intentionally designed our program to have at least 2 companies, certainly in the development and demonstration phase, and then we were fortunate enough to be able to award contracts to both of them as well. So I think that's an important factor, both to keep a good, healthy competition for as the market for space services is developing, and then having a redundant, dissimilar capability is certainly a strong point for carrying 2 suppliers for the space station.
Okay. Philip, and then we'll go over here, and then we'll go to the phone lines. Go ahead.
Philip Sloss with NASASpaceflight.com. I think for Ms. Doherty, what's your weather rules for low-level clouds in terms of ceiling and thickness?
It's not, I don't know all the specific numbers off the top of my head, but it's visibility. We have a certain requirement for our safety folks that are visual spotters to ensure the vehicle is actually gotten off the pad and heading downrange. We have a cloud ceiling requirement for that. And then other just general visibility for our radars and tracking, things like that. So it's hard to, if you have bad environmental effects on your radars, that could. But the low cloud ceilings are probably not going to come into play too much tomorrow, with only a 25% chance of them being there, and with the launch window at the small duration that it is, I think we'll see that there is enough visibility out there at that time of morning that we'll be able to have clear skies.
Okay, one more in here, then we'll go to the phone lines. If you're on the phone lines, just stand by. I'll call on your names coming up here shortly, right over here.
All right, thanks, guys. I'm Evan Kozloff from WBOC. I have another question for Ms. Doherty. Basically, with this new partnership of public and private, it brings kind of a new space race, some new excitement. And I know there are competitors on the other side of the coast. Wallops has a long history. How important is this launch tomorrow as a further investment into Wallops?
Oh, it certainly is. We're happy to have Orbital here and be involved in all of these missions. It's brought a lot of work to our facility, a lot of new people, and great opportunities and partnerships for us. So it's been a really good thing to have them here and to continue launching missions and keep this a very active place to be. So rocket launch is, of course, just one of the things we do amongst a host of other things, unmanned aerial vehicles and aircraft missions. So just one more way for us to be involved in NASA's missions.
Sarah, could I add to that?
Sure.
From Orbital's perspective, this is a really great partnership with NASA. with Wallops and with the state of Virginia and the Wallops community. We feel like we've been welcomed here. People seem enthusiastic about the business that we've brought, the jobs we've brought. We've created a couple of hundred jobs in the area at least, and we hope for that to continue for many years to come. But the best thing is we've seen people come with a lot of interest in what we're doing, who want to learn more about it and who want to figure out how they can be a part of it, from students in the local schools and the teachers to the Chamber of Commerce's and the Chambers of Commerce and the local business leaders. And we really appreciate the support and interest. And we hope that people will see we are trying very hard to contribute to the economy here, to the opportunities for people in the area. And we certainly appreciate the efforts of the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, the Virginia Space Flight Authority, and the Virginia Department of Transportation in helping empower all of that. They've been an essential part of all this development. Thanks.
Okay, let's go to the phone lines. We're going to come back here after we go to the phone lines and take some more questions from in the room and also social media. Again, use the hashtag AskNASA, and we'll get your questions in as much as we can. So Tracy Watson with USA Today, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I wanted to ask Ms. Daugherty about the visibility. What can people up and down the coast expect to see? I mean, I think a lot of people will be looking for a rocket. So what's the most they can expect to see? And also, how big an area are you clearing of mariners, and what kind of boats normally use that area? Thank you.
Okay, your first question, of course, unless you're very close to here, you will actually not see a rocket flying through the sky, but you'll see a contrail or flames from the stages burning in flight. So depending on how far away you are, those will be the types of things you'll see, and it certainly won't look quite like an aircraft contrail. It'll be much larger and much lower and in a different shape, but certainly clouds and potentially some flames from the stage burnings depending on the lighting and where the sun is at that time. And could you repeat the second question?
Tracy, are you still there? Oh, ship avoidance? Okay.
Oh, right. The area is about 80 nautical miles from the coast out offshore, and that's just the area we like to give for everybody as notice. Of course, it depends on the sea state and the winds on launch day about where exactly boats can be positioned out there in the ocean, but we actively work that. Like I mentioned before, we have assets here, aircraft and boats that we use, as well as our partners with the U.S. Coast Guard and the Virginia Marine Police to keep that area clear.
Okay, let's go to Frank Mooring with Aviation Week. Frank, are you there?
Yes, thank you. This is for Frank Culbertson. Alan mentioned a growing competition down the road in commercial space services. I wonder if you could discuss a little bit how important this launch is, or a successful mission is, to Orbital's plans to extend the service to other customers besides NASA, whether you have any payloads or prospects of payloads under your two government contracts right now, and also how many missions you could support with your current infrastructure there at Wallops.
Thank you, Frank. That's a good question. As far as the number of missions, we have hardware either here or poised to be shipped here for the next 2 missions, and so we're in good shape from a hardware standpoint, and we could support up to 10 missions with the current orders that we have in place with our major suppliers, both in the U.S. and overseas. We can go beyond that, of course, if NASA comes forward with other requests for cargo delivery or other customers come in with firm orders. This launch and delivery is extremely important to the future of the company on this line of business because it will demonstrate to people twice the reliability of the Antares and then, of course, the reliability and capability of the Cygnus spacecraft. We don't have any other specific orders for individual missions. We have a few orders for payloads and other endeavors that want to use our services while we're on orbit with Cygnus. Or to use the launch as a secondary way of getting to orbit. However, we do feel that we do know that we have a lot of interest from people who are waiting to make sure we do in fact succeed with this before they place a firm order, and we think they'll be coming. And we have the capability to launch more than twice a year here from Wallops, probably 4 times a year. Could easily be supported if we have the orders for that. And so we're looking forward to what will come next, and we feel like this will fill a need in the country for scientific observing and possibly even national security payloads going forward, and as well as supplying services and capability to the human spaceflight program and helping the space station continue to expand, because that is really important, that we continue to keep people on the space station, keep it supplied, and keep that outpost in space so that we don't lose that toehold.
Okay, let's go to James Dean with Florida Today.
Hi, thanks. A couple of questions for Mr. Culbertson. With the launch slipping a day, I think you're planning to reach the station a little bit faster now. Could you discuss what the impact of that has been on compressing that timeline a little bit, and how likely do you think it might be that you might want that extra day back?
We were planning on rendezvousing in 5 days and rendezvousing on the 22nd. We're now going to do it in 4 days. We did have margin in that 5 days, and it's not been very challenging to replan. We can fit that in pretty easily. However, we can delay a day or two if necessary. It's just that it would inconvenience the crew and affect the planning that they have for the week going forward, and we're trying to avoid that if possible. But NASA's flexible in that regard and can replan if necessary. We do have the 10 demonstrations that we have to conduct en route to the station, and we have time to do those in the 4 days. And then we will execute early on the 22nd, as was mentioned. We can stay on orbit for 30 days easily, loading disposable cargo for re-entry. And if necessary, if for some reason we delayed the launch and had a conflict with the Soyuz launch that's coming up, we could actually loiter on orbit waiting for the rendezvous activity for a week or even up to 2 or 3 months if necessary. So we've got the fuel and the technical capability to go for an extended period on orbit. We also can go for an extended period after undocking, unberthing, and release if that were necessary or required by future payloads. And we will do that in the future probably starting on around the 4th or 5th mission, where we'll stay on orbit for longer periods of time and conduct some experiments or activities for customers before we re-enter. So the spacecraft was designed to operate for a long period of time, and we will do that as requested.
All right, we've got 2 more on the phone lines, and we'll come back here and take some social media questions. Alan Boyle with MSNBC. Are you there?
The module part of it. Could you explain a little further just how similar that is to an MPLM or the ATV's cargo module? Are they basically identical, or are there important differences? And could you also describe, I don't know if you could just sort of describe what it might feel like if you were inside it in terms of volume when it's not packed full of stuff, or just sort of what the volume feels like?
The Cygnus is a little bit smaller than the MPLM. It's that and the ATV are built by the same company, so a lot of the characteristics are the same. But the Cygnus was designed specifically for carrying dry cargo, and it's set up to maximize the efficiency of the volume so that we can put as many bags into that space as possible up to the maximum weight carrying capability. When you first go in, when it's fully packed, it's going to feel very crowded because you're going to have a corridor about half a meter by half a meter to go through. But when it's empty, it's pretty roomy, and I've been inside them in the factory, and there's plenty of room. And it's very similar to being in an MPLM, just a little bit smaller, but the characteristics are similar. We're not big enough to carry a full space station rack without adding a secondary structure. And we also can't move a rack through our hatch because our hatch is smaller than the hatch that the station uses between MPLM and the rest of the station, or between the station modules. We could, in fact, add a larger hatch in the future if that were required or requested, because we use a standard size CBM, and it would fit fine in there. It's just for weight savings and volume saving reasons we went with a smaller hatch that accommodates the bags that we have to carry.
All right, now let's check with Alan Boyle. I think James got a little follow-up in there. Let's go to Alan.
Hi, thank you. I guess this would be for Frank or Mike. Relating to the glitch, the communications glitch, when the rocket was brought to the pad, is there anything more to report on that, how that was resolved? And then I guess kind of the follow-up would be, if something goes wrong on orbit, for example, SpaceX had the problem with the thruster and they were able to issue commands to clear that problem, what sort of capability would Cygnus have to deal with problems that could possibly be solved if you can communicate with the spacecraft? Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk to the first part of that. I think you're referring to the issue that we had the first pass through our combined systems test. That was in fact traced to a cable that had a fiber optic line in it that was damaged. We haven't had an opportunity to do a complete diagnosis of that, but it appears it was probably damaged at some point during the rollout. And that did cause a switch up in our a junction box we have up on the tower to need to be reset. So basically the fix to that issue was to replace the cable and then go up and reset the power on the switch. And after that, everything worked fine and has continued to work fine since we got that repaired. Frank, I'll let you talk to the on-orbit question.
Okay, and by the way, Mike Pinkston and I have worked very closely together for the last 3 years. But I grew up with a guy named Mike Pinckney, sorry.
You knew.
Yeah, but I think the question was if we had problems with one of the thruster zones, could we reset it on orbit? And that really depends on what the problem was. We do have the capability, if we lose one of the strings, to reset it if that's necessary, but we can certainly conduct a safe rendezvous and grapple with one string down.